these people that are caught up in this, that are trafficked, everything is neglected. They don't have any health care. Nothing is prioritized for them in terms of being taken care of. Only what is necessary to keep them on the job, right? What condition do you find these people in when you do get them out?
I'm going to tell you about a case that really made an impact on me where the woman, it was a domestic servitude case. So the woman was forced to sleep and basically live in the hallway, wasn't even given a bedroom. The dogs in the house slept on the bed, and she was sleeping in the dog bed when we found her. She was, malnourished. She was barely given any food. She was, given maybe some rice every day. She was experiencing short-term memory loss, health issues because of all of that, not to mention the mental health issues, right? So that's why it's important for organizations like CAST to have what we call holistic or comprehensive care. When people come to us, they're physically ill, their mental health is not good, they're afraid for their lives, they're afraid for their families. So it's really important that we have clinicians on staff. It's also important that we have attorneys and social workers, each person kind of playing a role in that survivor's life. So we haven't talked about this yet, Dr. Phil, but it's the one crime victim population that is constantly criminalized for being trafficked. It's ridiculous how our system treats victims of trafficking. We did a study of survivors of trafficking. Over 90% had rap sheets, had records of arrest for crimes that traffickers were forcing them to commit. And so for this reason, having an attorney or a whole legal team support survivors of trafficking is important for, doing the vacatur of records so that they can apply for housing without any problem, so that they can apply for jobs and truly get back on their feet again once they've escaped. So it's an issue of intervening and making sure we're helping people escape from the traffickers, but it's also important for us to fix the systems that are re-exploiting victims over and over again.
Okay, so somebody is forced into sex trafficking, for example. They get busted for prostitution.
Yeah, and other things too, like assault and theft. We see so many, not just prostitution-related crimes, but a lot of different crimes where they're arrested because the trafficker's putting them in that situation.
What other kinds of crimes?
So like assault, theft in order to eat, drugs, selling drugs. There's a lot of different crimes that we see. But the most important thing to understand, and for law enforcement to be trained this way, is that the traffickers are threatening to kill them or to kill their family member or to beat them or not feed them if they don't comply. So as a system, we need to do a better job to look at those nuances so that victims aren't re-exploited by systems that are designed to actually help them.
So they might tell them, you need to go in and shoplift some high-value item for me, or you're not going to get fed today, or you're going to sleep out in the cold, or you're going to get beat,
That's
or
right.
I'm going to beat up your sister or whatever. And then if they get caught doing that, then they get charged. And so now you get them out and they go apply for a legitimate job and they go, well, you got an arrest record. I'm not going to hire you.
Exactly. And which is why having legal services in addition to clinical services and health services is so important for survivors of trafficking. We did a study with survivors, and we learned that of the top 3 services that were available, legal services was one of the top ones they needed, right? So even survivors are telling us that we need attorneys to help us vacate these records because we can't even lease an apartment in our own name. So who do you think is on the lease? The trafficker, right?
Yeah.
They're again forcing them to be dependent on someone who doesn't have their best interest at heart.
Now, I know at least in California, you've worked with the DA's organization.
Yeah, all of law enforcement and the DAs. We
Yeah,
have
the
a
DAs
partnership
are
with.
really important.
Right. They're really important, as is the Attorney General of California as well, also a big supporter of our cause. So it's the child welfare system too. We are working actively with LA County right now to pilot this new program so that all of the county agencies, all of the systems that might unintentionally re-exploit or re-traumatize victims of trafficking no longer do so by having training and a fuller understanding of exactly how human trafficking works.
Yeah, and the point is that if you're re-victimizing this person, creating additional vulnerability, which makes them susceptible to being exploited again.
Exactly. Yes.
Because you're putting them back on the street again. They can't get a job. They can't get an apartment. So now they're standing there aimless again and subject to being picked off again.
Exactly. At least where maybe I'll get a meal, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're thinking, right?
So this is an auto-exacerbating circumstance
Mhm.
if the system continues to re-victimize them.
That's right. Exactly.
What we're trying to do is break the cycle.
Yes.
But there's got to be more to it because this is how they've learned to get by. It was forced on them, but it is their default mode. So you've also got to empower them with education, housing, skills, something where they don't have to go back to this. They've
That's right.
learned some accounting skills, some retail skills, some
And
inventory
life skills,
Exactly.
right? How to negotiate, how to be confident and have a sense of self-worth. That's why the programs at CAST are so important, right? I hear over and over again survivors who graduate from our program that's what they appreciate most. It is the hard services like legal services and housing, shelter, but it's also that sense of self-esteem that they never had before. So, for example, remember the survivor I mentioned earlier from Santa Monica, where she was on the streets of Santa Monica? That's where she was recruited. She unfortunately didn't get a proper intervention by law enforcement or even a homeless shelter where she went. But when she did get the help, when she came to CAST and got the help that she needed, we got her in line with one of our corporate partners, Paul Mitchell Schools. And she got a scholarship to go through that program. And she's now a successful business owner. But now she needs business training. So we're setting her up with another community partner to learn, how to set up a website, how to do marketing on social media for her business. Those are the types of things. That community of support around a survivor is what will keep them in a place of self-confidence, self-agency, self-determination, and be successful in their life.
I don't want to get too far off the mark here, but that's something that if we were teaching this in the schools, we're teaching kids to add, subtract, geography, a little history. If we were also teaching them to recognize signs of anxiety, depression, erosion of self-esteem, things of that nature, then you know what? They might not wind up in the situation of being so vulnerable to be trafficked to begin with.
Exactly.
And the fact that you're doing it when you're doing it might be the first time they've ever had anybody teach them about self-worth, self-esteem, whatever, because we're not teaching that. We're not teaching those mental health skills. We're not teaching them to recognize the signs of low self-worth, low self-esteem, the red flags for depression, anxiety, loneliness, learned helplessness, which is so important because when you get in the situation they're in, they truly get a perceptual set that says there's nothing I can do about this.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I would say also looking at like social networks, right? It's important for everyone and especially children to have a community of support around them, right? So what we know is traffickers will target people who are essentially alone, right? So making sure in the schools and also as parents, right, that we should be looking at, uh, do all of the children have a healthy social network and the skills to have that?
I've talked to some of these sex trafficked individuals that have been found, pulled out. I won't call this particular one a survivor because she claimed when I talked to her in 2017 that she was sold by her parents at birth to a powerful international sex trafficker, and she wasn't locked in a cage, but she was flown all over the world. And when she got old enough, then she was sex trafficked and eventually got out. I talked to her a matter of months after she was out. And when I talked to her, I heard in her voice, could see in her face and her eyes, she wanted to go back
Mm.
because she felt judged, unaccepted,
Yep.
shame and guilt for what she had done and the way people looked at her. And she felt safer and more, I guess, in her element back there than she did in the outside world because she didn't get the kind of programs that CAST offers.
That's exactly you hit the nail on the head. So, as a community, service providers, government agencies, and just communities need to listen to what survivors are telling us, right? That's the first step. If we're just setting up services and not talking with survivors about what their needs are, and then also evaluating after they go through our program or during the program, we should be evaluating if what we're doing is working. Because when we create these programs in partnership with survivors, truly listening to them, that's when we don't have survivors wanting to go back to traffickers because they finally have found their community, right? So, absolutely, it is a lot about developing programs, but it's also developing communities so that people feel safe there. They don't feel judged. They don't feel like the community has let them down. So, if a survivor of trafficking goes to, let's say, a homeless shelter and, you know, they're not treated well or they feel like they've been judged because they were sex trafficked or trafficked in general, then they won't feel comfortable there. We have to create a community where there's a sense of justice and belonging for all survivors.